all of the new technology, artificial intelligence, this is crazy. It's like the United Nations Secretary General recently said we are one misunderstanding, one miscalculation away from nuclear Armageddon. Mm-hmm. And he said we must reverse course, and we must. So I was in Brussels talking about my book because people were interested in it. What I learned is because they said to me, and these are disarmament groups, right? They said to me, your book condenses in a really dramatic, terrifying way what we have been trying to convey to world leaders for decades with a lot of information. And what we're trying to convey is this is madness. So the progress is that we've gone from 70,000 nuclear warheads to there are a total of approximately 12,500 today amongst the 9 nuclear armed nations. The disarmament people will tell you that's 12,500 too many. Mm-hmm. The United Nations recently created a treaty called, I'm going to mess this up, the IPTNW, the International Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And their idea is that gradually nations should begin to reduce their arsenals down to zero. Gradually. And so the opinion I would have, which seems like a responsible journalist, that sounds like a really good idea. And the word gradual is important because, okay, so we've been talking about the horrors of nuclear war, but you can also talk to proponents of deterrence, as I do, who will tell you we must have a nuclear arsenal because the bad guys do.
Mm-hmm. That's where I would fall.
Right? And by the way, that's the easier, it really is the easier, quicker conclusion.
I mean, I feel like it would be great if there were no nuclear weapons. However, we don't play nicely with one another, right? And so I think I'm just going to go off on a tangent here and say that the only way, look, if I were president or in charge of this country, the only way I would even consider eliminating our nuclear weapons is if we had a defense capability that was able to eliminate any nuclear weapon on the way here.
Well, yes, the idea is absolutely that the disarmament idea isn't, we should give up all of our nuclear weapons and then just believe that North Korea and Russia and China and Iran, or, Iran doesn't have the weapon yet. All of these other countries will just give up their capability. That would be madness. Mm-hmm. But the disarmament that when we went from 70,000 down to 12,500, Russia reduced their arsenal, alongside of us. So reduction is possible.
Did we really reduce the arsenal though, or have we developed better? Maybe better is the wrong word. Have we developed more powerful and more devastating nuclear missiles to where we don't need 70,000? Maybe I'm pulling numbers out of nowhere right now, but just for example, maybe one of today's nuclear warheads is equivalent to 100 back in 1950s.
Except for that's not the way it is.
Okay.
Which is so interesting because you and I both know the weapon systems that are, the kinetic weapon systems that are used by the military in ground wars or air wars have been advancing like nobody's business as technology has been advancing. The nuclear weapons are essentially the same. Not much has changed. We haven't built any new nuclear weapons since Clinton was president because he signed a treaty prohibiting that. And Russia complied. So allegedly, we do not build any new nuclear weapons. It would be a massive violation of a treaty. All of our nuclear weapons are decades old, which is a whole other debate because now the Defense Department has just asked for I think it's $900 billion to upgrade the arsenal. because it is old. And the ICBMs are old. So this is it's like you're suddenly down the rabbit hole and going, wait a minute, how did I wind up here? But the number of nuclear warheads is simply the number of nuclear warheads. What's another grim consideration is that dismantling a nuclear warhead is also a dirty process. And there's a plant in Texas that does this, which itself is like a major target because it has all the dismantled plutonium and uranium cores. So the eyes can glaze over with like, isn't it just easier to have an arsenal of nuclear weapons that's the same size as ours? Which is why I point to the people like ICANN, like the Arms Control Association, who actively work on these disarmament issues with the United Nations. And the point of a book like mine is to make it digestible for the average person to understand that, like, this many nuclear weapons is madness. An accident or a miscalculation could lead to a nuclear war, and it's only going to end one way. Almost no one disagrees with that. Once nuclear war starts, it ends in Armageddon. And the scenario takes you through what happens and then the mistakes that happen because of technology holes.
What has been upgraded? It must be the transportation of the warhead. That has to have been upgraded by this point.
No.
Really?
I mean, a ballistic missile is... Okay, so here's how a ballistic missile works. Ready? Because this helped me to understand it. Shall I give you the 30-second version?
Please, let's do it.
Okay, so it happens in... You can just imagine it going from there over to that continent to that continent. And there's a little diagram in the book. By the way I know this is because the first director of DARPA... Are you familiar with DARPA?
I am.
Okay. DARPA's created in 1957-58.
I can't remember what it stands for, but basically DARPA is our advanced weapons.
Yes.
It's our advanced technology weapons, correct?
Defense Advanced Research Projects
There we go.
Agency. Another mouthful, DARPA. Okay. It began in 1957 after the Russians launched Sputnik. We got caught by scientific military surprise. That was like a bad thing. Herb York becomes its first science director. And he wanted to know, because the reason Sputnik was so threatening, it was a satellite, the Russian satellite, the first one orbiting Earth. The reason it was threatening was because it takes a rocket to get a satellite into space. And if you can put a satellite in space, pretty soon you can put a nuclear warhead on that rocket and hit the United States. That was 1957. That's where everything changed. And so Herb York wanted to know in seconds and minutes how long it took for that ICBM to get to the United States. So he hired the smartest guys in the room, the Jason scientists, about which there are extraordinary many conspiracy theories. I interviewed a number of them, including its founder, for the DARPA book.